Forest dweller. My name is William, and I am being hunted by something. I have explored all of the forests of America, but never in my life have I experienced a horror greater than the enigmatic Slenderman, and whatever it was is coming for me now. I was on my way up to Mount Lemon after I had returned home from Arizona. I had decided to make that my final exploration of the year, so I took my best friend with me to share the experience. When we arrived, we set up camp in a patch of forest close to our car and the road. The day went by fast, and too soon night would fall. It was that night that we heard the first warning of our fate. After we had eaten dinner and were settling down for the night, we heard something that sounded like the wail of an air raid siren. But it only sounded once, which troubled us. At first I thought that the nearby city of Tucson was being attacked, but we heard and saw nothing in the south. Then we heard it again, louder this time. Because of the mysterious sound, we kept our lights off and our mouths shut the entire night, just in case it wasn't our imagination. The next day we went to the mountains community to find out what that thing we heard last night was. We asked other people if they heard it, searched things on our computers, even looked for similar instances in history or reference books in the library, but we couldn't find any answers, except one. The only answer we could find, and that was at the end of the day, was an old man who told us that what we heard was the howl of a creature known only as the forest dweller. He told us that in ancient times a group of native Indians had come to this forest region to perform a ritual of some sorts to contact their gods, but the product of the ritual was not a means of communicating with the native gods, but a monstrous creature which killed half of the Indians who had summoned it, and the other half was dragged away into an obscure portal to another realm. I never really believed the man's story until that night. By nightfall we had settled down in our tent, thinking of the old man's story of the forest dweller. While I slept, I had a nightmare of the creature itself, opening its portal and dragging me into it, though I could not see it at all. I awoke with a start. It was still night time. Before I could go back to sleep, I heard something that made my heart twist, an otherworldly bellowing roar. My friend woke up with a gasp of horror. Whatever it was very close to our location. Then we heard something else that made us stiffen to where we sat, as still as statues, multiple thick, heavy footsteps coming our way. It sounded like 4 people were walking towards us. When they stopped, there was a pause before something made of wood grabbed my friend and pulled him out of the tent. I rushed out to help him, but I was hit in the head by something thick and heavy. When my vision cleared, I saw it holding my friend. It was a horrific sight, completely made of wood, 8 legs, a horrible smiling face, teeth like blades, claws like scythes. It took my screaming friend and sliced him to bits, sending the Gibbs into oblivion, before it turned to me and reached out to me. I got to my feet and ran for it. The creature was chasing me, roaring as it lunged forward. I had managed to make it back to the car and drove off as fast as I could. I could still hear the creature chasing me, but oddly enough, the mirror didn't show its reflection. Neither did the rear-view camera. It only showed digital interference. As the forest faded from view, so did the roars of the forest dweller. But I had made eye contact with it, and I can't be sure of it, but I think it knows me, and now I can't be sure any place where there are trees can be safe at all. It's been 7 years since, but I still cannot get the image of that horrible wooden face out of my head. The nightmares are the worst. I see the creature holding my friend. He's screaming for help. I cannot move, and in a single slash he's gone and sent to its dark realm. Out of sheer fear, I cannot sleep, cannot go anywhere where the trees are thick, cannot look at spiders anymore, cannot bear to listen to howls or sirens. I do not know where it is, but I do know that it's coming for me, and that it does not give up when it finds a victim. The forest dweller is relentless, and it will not stop until it gets me. What I saw will haunt me until the day I die, which I hope is soon. Forest trail. It's not quite in a forest, it's just a walkway behind the back of a school that's slightly overgrown in some parts, with large trees in it. The path is man-made, running straight through the forest. It's supposed to be for bikes. They use it often, but you can walk on it too. In autumn, squirrels roam the trees. You can hear them snapping branches and see them scrambling from trees to tree, though it's best not to stop and watch them for too long. The autumn air will nip at your ears and nose, making them sting a bit. In summer, the berries that sprout from the tree can be smelt. They aren't very nice. It really shows. Only a fool to take one and eat it. To birds they're fine, but to humans they can have a few unpleasant effects. The part that travels through a small grove of trees is home to the whines and whistles of the wind. Branches creak, and in the depth of the night, if you stand still, you can hear their moans, the words they cry. Some are a literate jumble, others may hold some importance to you. It's not best to stand for too long in the dark. They don't tolerate eavesdroppers very long. In spring, when it's not quite warm, The birds will give hushed calls to each other, checking their homes. They twitter and tweet, giddily laughing at your presence. Oh, they laugh at you in the spring. They are scornful pests and curse you with their mask of cheery songs, but you love it. We all do. Their gossip flows through their songs like wildfire. If briefly now you slow your pace and pause to listen to the high-pitched words, maybe you'll feel enlightened by their squawks of nonsense. But if you do, remember, do not wait too long, for their scornful tweets may come closer to where you're weak. In winter, there are no birds. In winter, the trees are asleep. Their leaves have fallen away, and the ground is barren. In winter, whispers do not wander. In winter, you must be quick. In winter, harsh winds may bite your skin and burn the tip of your nose and rim of your eyes. Squirrels do not break branches, but branches will break. Feet may not hit the ground, but footsteps shall be made. Do not break pace, though blind they watch. If winter days does not chill your bones, travel through at night with quick steps. In winter's night, when you wonder if that shadow on the ground is really yours. In winter's night, when you twitch at every sound made. In winter's night, when cold bristles your skin, turning your cheeks to a ruddy cherry as you peer down each darkened, twisting corner. There are no lights on this particular trail, and once it curves away from the school, all light is vanquished. Don't fear it. Keep pace as you walk. The sight may be dead, but you do not need to be afraid. You aren't alone. Never have you been. So would you now, in the cold spikes of dark winter's night, stand still and wait for just a second too long, and listen to the crunch of feet, not your own. A walk in the woods. It was a calm summer's day in the woods of central Mississippi, and he walked through the forest, enjoying his time, when he heard a loud rustling to his right. Instinctively he ran to cover, as to not be spotted. Through the gaps in the bushes he saw a strange pink creature walk through the underbrush. It was somewhat like himself, but he didn't think it could be one of his species, for it was much too short and scrawny, even for a young member. It also had an odd, slender, shiny appendage protruding from its back. Curiosity overcoming his fear, he decided to follow the strange pink thing. The creature didn't seem to know where it was going, for it would often stop and look around with a confused look on its ugly, hairless face. As he was walking, he accidentally stepped on a twig, which caused the creature to whirl around suddenly. He panicked and ducked into a bush, but the creature followed in hot pursuit. He ran and ran until his legs would no longer carry him, but the creature had somehow managed to catch up with him. He hid behind a tree to catch his breath, but the creature soon discovered his location. In utter horror, the pink creature whirled its skinny appendage around into its thin arms, glinting brightly in the afternoon sun, and a bright flash appeared out of the end. He felt a searing pain in his chest and looked up, only to see the creature's appendage flash again, after which he fell to the ground, dead. The young hunter, stunned by his recent experience, examined the thing that he had just shot. It was large, bipedal, and covered in hair. It lay on its back, one bullet hole in its barreled chest, and one between its eyes. He stood in amazement and blurted out, "Holy crap! I can't believe my eyes. I've just shot and killed an actual Bigfoot. I've got to bring it with me, or no one will believe a word I say." To which he hauled the creature's corpse out of the forest, back to his pickup. Waldgeist. Last Friday night, I decided to head out on an impromptu camping trip in central Pennsylvania, near where I live. Since none of my friends were available, I packed up my gear and got ready to head out. I marked down where I was going on a spare map and left it with a note for my roommates in the event that I didn't return. By Sunday morning, like I had planned, once I made it up into the woods, I hiked for a few miles before coming across a nice campsite, which had been cleared some time earlier in the season. The sun was almost down, so I decided to set up my tent and start gathering some firewood. I underestimated how dry it was that evening, and I burned through almost all of my wood. By shortly after dark, I searched the woods nearby where there was some light from my fire, but there was just not enough downed fuel, so I was going to have to head out deeper. I went back to my tent and emptied out my bag, looking for my flashlight, but I couldn't find it anywhere. My other option was to rig up a very short-term torch with some gauze from my first aid kit and a small amount of liquor I had packed for entertainment's sake. All the torch did for me was burn so brightly that my eyes were no longer adjusted to the darkness. As I fumbled through the woods along the sides of the trail, the firelight faded behind me. As the torch went out and my eyes were coming back into focus, I saw something slowly coming towards me, about 20 feet down the trail. This wasn't the first time I had seen something like this late at night up in these woods. Bobcats, black bears and coyotes are all known to be in the area, but they tend to keep their distance from people. It was a smoky shade of grey and moved fluidly along the trail. I gave a sharp whistle and clapped my hands to make my presence known. By the sliver of moonlight coming through the trees, I could only barely make out movement now. As it came closer, it faded into the shadows and left no trace. I convinced myself that it had only been the shadows of the trees playing tricks on my eyes. I gathered up some small limbs to keep my fire going long enough to get prepared to sleep. I woke up with a start later that night and sat listening for what seemed like an hour. I was certain that I'd heard something while I was dreaming, certain that it had only been my imagination. I returned to sleep. When I awoke in the morning and opened my tent, I found my campsite covered in the ashes from my fire pit. The thin layer of ash looked like a fresh snowfall. In the ash between the trail and my tent, there was a single line of paw prints leading from the path to the front flap where my feet had been during the night. There was no trail leading away. I don't know what the forest was trying to tell me that night, but I'm not afraid. If anything, I will walk those trails with more confidence from now on, knowing that some protector of those woods encountered me and provided me shelter for the evening. I will sleep well in those woods, knowing that I have seen whatever spirit guards those trees, and that it has seen me. The beckoning pathway. You can barely see it, but it leads somewhere. There it was, that path I always wanted to travel down. I always loved hiking, and these woods had many beaten paths that just begged to be explored. I'd been down many of them, and some had gorgeous views, and others were nothing more than spots that some nature-loving couples used for obvious sexual activity. Judging by the discarded condom wrappers and occasional lost piece of clothing. But this place had to be different. At least I hoped so. It was a long hike to get there, and it took me long enough to build the stamina to travel so far. Months upon months of exercise made my endurance much better, and I would rarely get short of breath unless I was sprinting for long distances. I looked better than I did in the previous months, that's for sure. Not only that, but now I was in peak physical condition. I always wanted to look how I did at that point. I had lean muscle, and I was curvy in all the right places. That gut I despised had finally shrunken away into oblivion. And I'd be damned if I'd let it return. After all, what woman wants to be fat and unhealthy? But enough about that. Let's get back to the path. As I was saying, this place was beautiful. The trees here seemed older, the air seemed fresher, and the canopy above was so thick, hardly a sunbeam would pass through. The path itself seemed old, and it carried an air of mystery that seemed to lure me in. I remember each time I would walk and catch sight of it. It always seemed to call me. Though I was very tempted, I knew that if I explored it then, I would be too exhausted to walk back out and get in my car to drive home. That is, until now. I was ready this time. The beckoning path seemed to lead me into nothing but pure darkness, but I knew there had to be more than that. There were probably all kinds of beautiful things waiting in that thick foliage, just waiting to be discovered. My curiosity always got the best of me. It was time to explore. The trees were gigantic. They seemed to be nearly ancient. I knew some had to be hundreds of years old. Moss climbed up some of their trunks, only seeming to increase their age. The place seemed to be untouched by human hands. If not for the scraggly trail, it seemed as though nature would overtake the bare dirt once again soon. For some reason though, the occasional shiver would tease at the hairs on the back of my neck, making them stand on end. It wasn't cold at all, though. It was at least 70 degrees Fahrenheit outside, so why did I feel so cold? I shrugged it off and decided to put on the hooded jacket I was carrying in my backpack. I searched the area, just soaking in the natural beauty of the forest. Only then did I realize that the canopy formed by the outstretched branches was so thick that what beams of sunlight could come in were hardly any more than thin fingers that could barely illuminate the path. I paused. Did I just hear breathing? I held my breath, checking to see if it was just my own. That seemed to be the case. I only laughed at myself for being so paranoid. But that chill returned as I forced a light-hearted chuckle. My instincts were trying to take control. They were telling me to turn around and go back. They were telling me something was horribly wrong. They wanted the safety of the sunlight. I was an idiot. I pushed it all away. I disregarded all of those things as paranoia. Just then, I saw a lumbering figure a few yards away, easily 9 feet tall, though I only caught a glimpse. It seemed human, or at least simian. It passed behind a tree, and I saw no other sign of it. Needless to say, it scared the hell out of me. There were no apes, or for that matter, any other primates that fit a description matching what I had just seen in that area. There was a zoo nearby, but it would have been all over the news if something had broken loose. I tried to convince myself that I was just seeing things, but it wasn't working at all. My mind travelled back to all of the thoughts of Bigfoot, and how many jokes were made about how it only exists in blurry, out-of-focus areas, or that he, she, or it was just someone's excessively hairy hippie relative. I didn't laugh though. I couldn't bring myself to. That invasive feeling of being watched was ever so present. Was I being monitored? Now visibility was damn near gone. Why did I want to keep pressing forth? Was I hoping to discover something? I still don't know why I did that. I broke out my flashlight, shining it around in the thicket of trees, only to make a fascinating discovery. There were carvings on the trees. Some of the bark was peeled off of some, and primitive carvings were inlaid in the wood. What struck me as odd was that much of the art I saw resembled the art of evolution. But one thing unnerved me greatly. The final stage, human beings, as we know them, was missing. Did this mean that we were just as mythological to Sasquatch as they are to us? I took a step forward to view the carved image a little more closely. A branch cracked beneath me, only causing me to let out a startled yelp. This had to be a joke. I had to see what was behind this. I continued. The terrain began to grow a little more difficult to climb, but I had to know. That was either my best or worst trait. If something intrigues or interests me, I must get to the bottom of it, even if it's the last thing I do. I certainly don't feel that way anymore. Soon, I felt that chill again. I was being watched, and that was clear. Rustling sounds weren't heard, but maybe whatever was watching me had lived here since the beginning of its time. One thing began to confuse me, though. Another source of light was nearby. There was a dull, yellow glow to it. It appeared someone had made a fire nearby. Maybe I could ask them for help, finding my way out. I was definitely lost by now, and it was probably dark, even outside of the woods. At this hour, I could also smell meat cooking, only reminded me of how long it had been since I'd had a good meal. I turned off my flashlight, following the dim light. I decided to look into this further, walking as quietly as I could until the fire came into sight. It was rather a small fire, but what I saw frightened me. There was a whole group of these simian bipeds, fitting the classical description of Sasquatch, gathered around the fire. They seemed to communicate in grunts and guttural vocalizations, but it wasn't so much their presence that frightened me. It was the meat they were preparing. A sharpened stick was driven through what had obviously once been 2 human legs, arms, and a torso. The head appeared to be missing. The grunts suggested they were communicating, but I found myself stumbling backwards in terror. My flight reflex was taking over. I could fight my instincts as much as I wanted to earlier, but this time I'd let them take control. My heart was racing in fear, and I spun around. Only one way left. I was going back the way I came. Now, with my flashlight to guide me, I had to find my way out, running on adrenaline alone. I was terrified, but I knew that getting out of here could be a life or death situation. Once I had made it back to the strange carvings, something made my heart feel as though it was about to leap through my chest. Leaves and branches were snapping. I was standing still. This only made me start running again, faster this time. But was there any hope for me? Whatever it was, knew this forest better than I did, and there was no time for me to summon up a little plan to outsmart this thing. All I could do was hope. I was in better shape than it was. It was in pursuit of me. but fortunately I seemed to be a step ahead. There was no way I could lose it in the forest, but at least if I made it back to civilization, it would probably flee. After all, what's more dangerous to a beast than a group of intelligent prey? I could see the opening to the path I had entered from, and somehow it was still just barely light outside. The fiery glow of the sunset was lighting the sky and casting a tangerine glow over it, over everything in sight. I would have taken the pleasure in the beauty of it all if I wasn't so positive I was being chased. My legs were carrying me as fast as they could, and I was finally into the clearing and on the beaten trail that others before me had worn. If I knew anything right now, it was that I shouldn't look back. I had to keep running, find my way to the car and drive home. I didn't even listen to find out if I was still being followed. My red sedan came into sight, and I quickly swung my bag off one arm and tugged the keys from the outside pocket, unlocking the vehicle and getting inside, just hoping I heard nothing. Before peeling out of the stretch of country road that led me there, I saw one thing in my rearview window: a bipedal simian akin to the missing link, covered in dark hair with a sloping forehead, could be seen baring its teeth as if challenging me. When the engine to my vehicle started and I revved the motor, the primitive beast fled in what might have been terror. It was a quiet drive back home. After I finally got the chance to get inside the house and relax, I began to realize something. Sasquatch or Bigfoot, whatever you want to call the apparent missing link between humans and their simian cousins, were always thought to be peaceful. But several people disappear every year and are never found. Yes, there are many reported sightings of such beings, but did you ever think that they haven't been collected by scientists and researched because so few lived to tell about them? I don't know if I'm correct, but the human remains roasting over that fire suggested that I am. Is it possible that this strange race is jealous of humanity for its advanced technology? I may never know, but I can tell you one thing: I'm not about to return to that path to find out. And that's it for tonight, my little hellhounds. Thanks for listening. If you have any scary stories you want narrated on the channel, then submit them to Reddit r/homeofscares and follow me on Twitter at homeofscares. Don't forget to like and subscribe and click the bell icon so you get notified every time I upload. And click the bell icon so you get notified every time I upload. Now, good night, my little hellhounds.